Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tipp Today. Thanks to Padraig, who reminded me that I was quoting from the theme song to Cheers, as Padraig told me. I think I said Friends, did I? See, it's Monday morning with me, Padraig. Anything could happen. 1800 938 007. There's been an alarming spike in the number of young people in Ireland ending up with spinal cord damages and lasting injuries from inhaling nitrous oxide, a study has found. Now, Sinn Fein brought forward legislation to regulate the sale of nitrous oxide, but it was delayed in a government vote last week. Sinn Fein community activist and Forza trade union activist Dean McGrath joins me now. Good morning to you, Dean.
Good morning, Fran. Good morning to your listeners. How are you this morning? And Happy New Year.
And many happy returns to you, Dean. I haven't spoken to you since before Christmas. Would you tell us a bit about this? What exactly is this gas? Why are so many people choosing to inhale it now?
Yeah, I suppose in our communities you can kind of see the waste of it sometimes. So just for most people, nitrous oxide is commonly referred to as laughing gas. So generally speaking, it's a substance which is usually used for catering reasons. Essentially, it's a part of the gas that keeps chilled for like whipped cream, and also in dentistry and medicine. So it's used for pain relief. So essentially, what laughing gas is it's gas stored in a compressed canister. What we're seeing is mostly young people and festival goers using it to get high. Currently, there's no regulation, so you have easy access to it if you buy it over the internet. And in terms of there's no distinction between commercial sellers and private sellers. So what people tend to do is they would there's two things that you can do. You can inhale directly from the gas canister. And it's not like a big gas canister, if you can imagine. It's a small thing, usually with quite colourful wrapping, because what we're seeing is it appears to be marketed more at children, so there can be laughing gas, get your thrill, stuff like that for sale. Essentially, what people would do to use it is they would squirt the gas or put the gas into a balloon and then take a hit. So when you take a hit of the gas, essentially it cuts off oxygen for the brain. So the nickname is laughing gas because it makes people feel woozy. It makes people, I suppose, users would report, I feel less anxious, etc. And then the other side of it, which is when people take the gas directly from the canister. Now, pressurised gas is stored, as anyone, I presume they may know, at about minus 40 degrees. So what we're saying is when they're taking it directly from the canister, they're still getting high, but they're presenting to emergency departments with frostbite because of how cold the gas is coming out of the canister, held directly to people's lips, sometimes to people's noses. And essentially what we're saying is we are seeing a huge amount of presentations, because this is actually a neurological thing in the brain, because you can imagine cutting off oxygen to the brain for any period of time, albeit brief, has significant side effects. So look, from our point of view, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in emergency departments and have been reported by consultant neurologists have been nerve damage, so the spinal cord, right? So tingling fingers, numbness in the limbs, and temporary paralysis. Last week, actually, just as the bill was in the doll, the American Journal of Neuroradiology, it was led by a consultant neurologist, I believe, from Beaumont Hospital. His name escapes me. But he charted spinal cord damage linked to nitrous oxide. So if you contrast these two time periods, the use of laughing gas, we'd say from 2012 to 2020, resulted in zero spinal cord damage injuries. From 2021 to 2024, 14 admissions with spinal cord damage. So you're seeing a huge spike there in the COVID period to 2024, and that includes numbness of the hands, feet, difficult to kind of coordinate. And it's that type of damage and what it's doing to the brain, we haven't really studied it in the same way. because it's a relatively, I'm going to say new phenomenon, but essentially, like Mark Ward, who is the Sinn Féin TD, who has really been leading out in this, has been highlighting this for about 5 years. So it's scary stuff when you think of it. And look,
it certainly
mad,
is. And another great worry for parents, I would imagine. Now, I presume what the government would say in terms of the delay with this legislation is that, and you alluded to it yourself, that there's some conflicts with the legitimate commercial and medical and industrial use of this, and it would possibly unintentionally criminalise legitimate users. Do you take that as a fair argument, Dean?
I understand the argument. I don't take it. I think it could have been sorted out as committee stage. So in the bill, there is a full section which says, like, it can be there. So basically, just so people know, what it proposes to do is it doesn't propose to criminalise the young fellow who bought it off the internet at 16 looking for a cheap high. The people who are targeting this towards young people are criminal gangs and drug dealers. They're the people we need to hit to stop the supply.
But they're probably overseas, Dean. So how do you police that,
So in terms of licensing, so if you're selling it in Ireland and it's coming in, there has to be a legitimate license. So say if it's a catering business or a catering wholesaler, they would apply to the government to be listed as a nitrous oxide vendor. So, and then we could see that it's going to legitimate use, because it does need to be used in dentistry, it does need to be used in hospitals. The issue, I suppose, the government has, what they've done essentially is kicked it down the road for 9 months to allow consultation between Department of Justice, to report it to the Commission in terms of the European Union, and to talk to the Department of Children and Youth Affairs, all of these things. Now, what we're saying is this has been raised as an issue for at least the past 5 years, because they came first in silver bullets. They were like little... it was Sean Crowe, he's another TD in Dublin. He coined it as a silver bullet. That's initially how they were taken. They were small little things. Now the gas canisters are roughly about 8 to 12 inches long. There's loads of gas in them. They're marketed specifically towards kids. So I think it's a case of us not being ahead of the trends. And I think the government, I understand why they did what they did, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it could have been sorted out.
They're also saying, Dean, that they're in the middle of a wider kind of a review of Ireland's drug laws, specifically that Misuse of Drugs Act, and, that has to evolve just because of some of what you described to us there. Would you accept that, though, that they are in the midst of that?
They certainly are. I think it's moving far too slow, and I think inevitably communities that are affected by recreational drug use and affected by drug litter will be far ahead of the politicians. I think that's just the reality. I think when we're seeing stuff as serious as spinal cord injury, and what I should have said is I said, vitamin B12. I think we're probably any health podcast, health and wellbeing show, they're talking about vitamin B12. So laughing gas use actually decreases the level of B12. So there's huge amounts of worrisome stuff. And what we're saying is Dr. Hugh Carney, who is a consultant neurologist at St. James's, is seeing 2 to 3 presentations per week of neurotoxicity, which is essentially the effects of excessive or recreational laughing gas use. So I don't think the politicians and the government is moving fast enough to keep up with this. And what I'm scared of is when we're talking about spinal stuff, we could have a young chap or young girl in the midst of their athletic career or whatever the case may be, and through the information maybe not being there, although the HSE is educating people about laughing gas. I think it just has to be out there so much that, look, you shouldn't be taking this stuff. Like, it's really dangerous in terms of the neurological damage it could do to you. And it's not worth taking the chance, essentially, is what I'd be saying.
The increase, Dean, to the national minimum wage took effect on the 1st of this month, but you take issue with this because you say it's wage discrimination against young workers, apprenticeships and interns as well.
Sure, I suppose I'm supportive of the minimum wage going up. What I'm not obviously, of any, I suppose, trade unionist or lefty like me is going to say that. But what's the position I have is there's a thing, and maybe some people know this, certainly a lot of young people know this, but there's a sub-minimum wage.
Yes.
So Ireland has a system where if you're over the age of 20, you qualify for the minimum wage. However, if you're 19, you're only paid 90% of the minimum wage. If you're 18, you're paid 80%. And under 18, you're paid 70% of the minimum wage. So the issue, I suppose, we have is that, and the Minimum Wage Act doesn't apply to apprentices at all. So you have some apprentices earning maybe $7.16 per hour. And the important thing to say here is a government body called the Low Pay Commission. So this isn't some radical socialist recommendation. The Low Pay Commission heard from all the stakeholders, heard from workers, heard from unions, heard from business, heard from ministers, as the case may be. And what they recommended was to abolish the sub-minimum wage. As they said, essentially we wouldn't have it. So if someone was over the age of 65 and we dialed down their wages because they'd reached the age of retirement, say, that wouldn't be accepted because it'd be discriminatory. I don't think we should accept it at the other end either.
Well, but that's a very different case, because these youngsters, they're learning their trade, whatever that trade might be, and it certainly helps with employment opportunities for younger people. Would you not agree, Dean?
Well, I suppose there's a couple of things there. Like, in terms of, I'll talk about apprenticeships, because I think we're all aware, and every day you have people on your show talking about housing, living in overcrowded situations, not able to, buy their house, caught in a rent trap, whatever the case may be. So apprenticeships there was a survey by Connect Trade Union, that's the electricians union, and they did a wide-ranging study around apprenticeships. And in the first 2 years of their apprenticeship, there was a 20% dropout rate. And the two reasons that leavers gave was delay in actually being called to it's called solace now, but the old FOSS stages, the case may be. Yeah. Delays in that, but also poor pay. I know from personal experience, a young chap who went to work as a carpenter, a very, very talented guy, really good with his hands. But because of the wages he was on, he cited that he just simply couldn't afford to live. We're living in a situation where we can talk about experience when you're young. And maybe 20 years ago, I still wouldn't have agreed to it. You'd have a better case. But when you think of rent, cost of living, insurance, all these things that affect young people's lives, I don't think you can argue that a sub-minimum wage is in any way compliant with what we should be doing. But
what about the businesses, though, who are struggling? And I mean, and this has hit them pretty hard, the minimum wage increasing, and they have all of the other difficulties of being in business as well, particularly, and because we're talking about younger people, we're talking about largely, I suppose, hospitality and retail and the like. They are struggling, Dean.
Sure, and I think, a couple of things, I'm fully aware of that. The Economic and Social Research Institute, which is, again, it would have said that in this Low Pay Commission that there would be minimal impact on businesses, because you have to remember, not all hospitality businesses some of them do pay the minimum wage to young workers. So it's an impact on business, but also in terms of those businesses, what we've said in terms of we'll talk, if we want to talk about a living wage and how it works. Research in the UK, stated that employers actually said 87%, because they were paying a certain living wage. Now, this is a separate thing, but imagine paying the minimum wage. So 87% of the employers, according to the Living Wage Foundation, say it improves their reputation. 66% said it helped them differentiate from others in the industry, and 62% said it improved recruitment of employees into their business. So we're saying it could have a net benefit. We're saying it will have a net benefit. However, I'm fully in acknowledgement that the employer in the small SME, which makes up the vast majority of our employment, if you're getting an electricity bill this morning that's outrageous, that I can fully understand your frustration. What I want to do, and what Fein want to do, is help them tackle the likes of the energy bills, because that's the one complaint the people in small business make to me when I talk to them, because they say energy bills are through the roof. But I'm sure you hear that all the time. In terms of the 9% VAT rate, you can have that, you know what I mean? I think that was a positive thing that the government did, in fairness.
But the business won't see that until, when is the next October,
exactly.
I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And also, talking to my friend who owns a local coffee shop in Clonmel, there are support schemes, and the government and ministers say that there are support schemes. And the support schemes in themselves are fine if you have the time to do them, and they can be very laborious. So we need support for businesses in order to actually access these schemes. So there's a pot of money there. But if you're working in terms of, I suppose, really, really hard, you may not have the time in the evenings to fill out all these application forms. I think they should be, again, streamlined and much easier for business in order to access them. But I don't think it's a direct contradiction between, employment and businesses versus workers. I think there's a way we can do both, and I think they can both be supported to have a net benefit to the circular economy. We know that low-pay workers, in terms of how they spend their money, they spend their money in their local, they're more likely to spend their money in their local shop. They're more likely to spend the money in their local supermarket, whatever the case may be, and that helps the circular economy. And bear in mind, we also have the situation where corporations get a very sweet deal, and these are multi-billion euro corporations. And I hear that all the time in terms of how businesses differentiate, like multi-billion euro corporations versus small business who are trying to keep their community going. And I'll be straight up, anytime I go in for a sponsorship, I get it from my local business, you know what I mean? So this isn't a binary workers versus business argument, but I do want to see the sub-minimum wage abolished.
Over the years, you and I have often spoken about geopolitics, and particularly Gaza over the years. And well, what you've been seeing over the past, a couple of weeks, in fact, more than anything else, Dean, what are you making of what's going on around the world?
Yeah, it's scary, man, isn't it? I don't know, and I'm not going to say you're older than me, because that'd be very rude of me, Fran, but have you seen a time? I can't remember a time when there has been more global instability than currently, and I think what it says is that, do you know that the speech given by the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney was very good at Davos. He kind of said what the quiet part out loud. Depending on who it is, we choose how to apply international law. So when it's our quote-unquote buddies in America, we don't call them out in the same way as we might call out Russia. Or when it's, an ally such as Israel, we don't call them out in the same way as we would Russia, quote-unquote. So, I think what we're seeing is we're saying this international rules-based order, which is a quote that was thrown out there, and it's a westernised thing. I think they're saying that there's absolutely no substance behind it, and that our international institutions, including the UN, they've got a lot of work to do in a very difficult time. We're seeing stuff that I certainly never thought I'd see, but what seems to be the scale of human suffering is huge, but also the scale of human positivity and people who are coming kind of into the political area where they never did before, to champion peace, diplomacy, talking to each other. Because if there's anything we've known on this island, it's that we have to kind of speak to one another and be in dialogue with each other, and that we can talk to whoever we need to. But to hear the President of the United States, he's an unhinged gentleman at the best of times, and I struggle with the word gentleman, but he's unhinged. But to hear, say, Keir Starmer in the United Kingdom essentially not willing to condemn him, do you know what I mean, when it came to, say, Venezuela, and then isn't really willing to condemn him when it comes to Greenland, but is a bit more forthright. I think it shows a level of hypocrisy that international law is important, because we need to apply it equally across everyone, even when people who are so-called allies
is there
are
not
doing
pragmatism there, Dean, and realpolitik? I mean, at the end of the day, Micheál Martin will still go with the bowl of shamrock if he's invited, and most of us believe that he should, just from a long-term point of view in terms of our relationship with the States.
Yeah, I think there is a pragmatism, but I think that pragmatic politics have helped get it into this situation, I think it's a reset as to, if we can't say that what's happening in America is horrendous, is wrong, and we see international law being flouted, and we see build-up of militarisation in Europe, we see the current Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael independent coalition attempting to dismantle the triple lock, which has its issues, but I don't think we should dismantle it. I think it can be dealt with in a reformist way. But it does kind of ring hollow to me a lot of the time when you're going over giving the bowl of shamrock, and when you're dealing with a bully, which I believe Donald Trump is. I don't believe appeasement is the way forward, because we deal with bullies in the same way. There was a bully in school. If you didn't stand up to the bully wouldn't stop bullying. Do you know what I mean? So I think it kind of goes back to kind of basic human relations, other than, well, we can't because of this and this. I think you can still have a diplomatic relationship with a country and call out what they're doing as wrong. And I think that's the important piece.
All right. Dean, good to talk to you as always. Thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Hey, Juan, thanks so much, Fran, and again, Happy New Year.
And many happy returns to you and the family. Thank you. That's Dean McGrath there speaking to us. Dean, of course, Sinn Fein community activist and also a Forza trade union activist. We'll take a break. We're back with Global News with Thomas in just a few moments.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.